Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I'm Matt.
I'm Eric.
And this week on a special episode, we are going to be doing something a little bit different. Each of us has seen a few different seasonal things here to wrap up October, and we are going to dive into the things that we have seen. Eric did not let you down. Well, I did with the title of this week's episode of Smile 2.
No, I got let down.
I was smiling because I saw the Broncos game on Thursday, but that made it a little bit tougher. And then we got hit with our first storm. And by the time I got home from a long week of work yesterday, and it was like 30 degrees and sleeting, I was like, Eric, how good was Smile 2? And Eric was like,
atrocious.
I will take care of that for you. So the big release this week is probably it's hard to say this is the preeminent horror release of the month since Terrifier 3, which I don't know about you, Eric. I have really zero desire. I'm not big on clowns.
Oh, my curiosity is so high for that movie.
I have a pretty high tolerance, as Eric's well aware. Last week I watched Blood and Honey 2, the Winnie the Pooh horror film, and I watched the Mickey Mouse horror film, The Mousetrap. I watched The Strangers Part 1. I mean, I'll do a lot of things, but every time I see a picture of that clown, I'm like, that's not for me, guys. I barely made it through it. I don't know. But Terrifier 3 actually, I think it's been the most profitable film of October so far because of its huge box office take. But probably the biggest mainstream horror release this month is Smile 2, which is the sequel to Smile that came out in 2022, a movie that both of us saw. And I was a little bit surprised about. It had that viral marketing campaign that I think brought a lot of people to the dance. And it was not too bad. I liked Sosie Bacon in the kind of lead role, but never once after watching that movie did I think that should be a franchise or have a sequel. And yet here we are. And Eric, I know you like some things about Smile and not others. So how did Smile 2 grab you?
Well, first of all, I wanted to point out that there's a fascinating thing about Terrifier 3, and that is the movie made it into theaters not rated. It is not rated by the MPAA. And it's still it was made for $2 million and it's on its way to making $30 million. So I think it's possible that it's going to be a marker in time for the way horror is handled in theaters. Things might be influenced by that movie a little bit. So I am curious about that. But what I'm not curious about at all is Smile 2. What has absolutely no interesting mark. Okay, so look, this is a movie about Sky Riley, played by Naomi Scott, who is a pop star who a year before these events happened was under the influence of some substance or another. I believe we see her definitively use cocaine, but she's in a car with her actor boyfriend, and there was an accident, and he died, and she received a horrendous back injury. And this caused her to go into a year of sobriety. And although that trauma is carried with her, so of course, when the demon or whatever it is from the first movie decides to continue on its path of latching from victim to victim, and it comes across her, it sees something that it wants to, I guess, feed on is what it is. And it's starting to circle my problem already with this, but whatever. When her drug dealer, who she has one moment of breakdown where she almost gets drugs, happens to be one of the people infected, she sees the drug dealer named Lewis, bash his own face in with a weight 3 times and then fall apart. And then off she goes on this journey of seeing horrible things and having horrible things happening to her while she tries to get rid of this creature. And that is probably 100% of what I'm sure I could tell you factually happens in the movie. The rest of it I can guess happened, but that is probably the most that I'm confident actually happened. My friend Curtis, back from this film is not rated. This film not rated. We were puzzling and sitting in the credits of the movie. Okay, so what did her friend, this close friend that she had alienated back in her drug using days, who was kicked out of her life, she tries to get back in touch with her, and the friend comes over one night, and we know that that friend has a talk with her mom, and the mom we know is real because the mom was there before she was possessed, or whatever the word it is for this creature being in someone. But there's a point in the movie where, of course, as this creature plays tricks on the person that's in, just like the first movie, you have a moment where she finally gets a call back from her friend, and the friend says they've never met. And the friend is like, yeah, you keep leaving me these weird texts, and I got your voicemail, but you're so toxic, I never wanted to talk to you. And of course, she's sitting right next to her friend, who is obviously, that means the demon. And the demon is like, your friend never loved you. And we're both kind of confused because when she finally snaps back to whatever reality is in this movie, we're now questioning how far back the influence of this creature went. Because was it in the illusion that the creature is pretending her friend never got back in touch with her? Or did her friend actually never get back in touch with her and the creature was just affecting her like that? Because in the movie, they try and give you a measure that nobody has lasted longer than a week without this creature consuming a person. And they explicitly say that she's on day 3. Okay? Everything else in the movie happens on day 4 to the end. So she only lasts 4 days. So, or she only believes that it lasts 4 days while the week is finishing out and she gets ready for her big performance. I don't know. I don't want to spoil it for people who are seeing it, because here's the thing. The direction in the movie is very tight, very fluid. From the very beginning, I cheered for the opening of this movie. In my head, I didn't actually cheer out loud in the theater, but whatever. The first shot of the movie is Kyle Gallner, who's an actor I adore, reprising his role from the first movie. And like the first shot, you just see him sitting there and you see a title without anything coming before it of 6 days later. And it's like, oh my gosh, we're still right in the middle of this thing. And he walks out, and you immediately see in his peripheral, as the camera is spinning around him, girl on fire, referencing the death that he saw that would have gotten the creature latched onto him. And he puts himself in this intense situation where he tries to pass the demon on to someone. And that's what gets the demon passed on to the drug dealer of Naomi Scott. And then, I will spoil this, he is pancaked by a truck, as seen in the trailer. That moment in the trailer that you've seen a million times where the truck swipes off the road and hits somebody.
And makes the bloody smile.
Yeah, that's him. And I was like, what? Huh. And once again, I'm stuck in this thing where they have a character who is supposed to be a character who lost someone close to them, to the demon, and has done a bunch of research on how far back the demon has gone and knows a secret on how to beat it. And I can't help but sit here and think, you had Kyle Gallner and you could have used him for this, but instead they used this other actor, and we're left wondering whether or not this person really existed or not. There is a point in time where I think you can say for sure. You know the shot in the movie where there's a hall of mirrors and all the creatures are like walking towards her like that? That sequence, there's something that happens where I think you can say from here on out, this is all in her head. And I think before that, only some things are in her head. But it's still, it's not clear enough to the point that I don't understand how and why this creature operates to the point that I'm supposed to be scared. So this movie relies on screaming jump scares at you, spamming loud noises, making characters just scream and wallow in pain constantly in order to get its scares. And all I had to do to mute that is not even cover my ears, but just push this part of my earlobe back slightly. I don't know if you've ever done this before, but you can completely leave your hearing open and you can numb yourself to big jumps just by just lightly pushing on the front little lobe part of your ear. And when I started doing that, every time the obvious cues for jumps happened, then the jump scares stopped having any effect, even though I could still hear everything that was going on. And everything that is supposed, it's creepy at that point, but nothing is scary because nothing makes any sense because I don't know what's supposed to be happening. Like the suggestion is the creature makes horrible things real in your mind and then feeds off of your horror at experiencing those things. But my question is, if characters completely can't control themselves and can't even experience reality while this is happening to them, why does this creature need a human host when it can create 100% of what it's feeding off of by itself? Like I don't understand. I don't know. And the
The rules
implications
of the world.
Yeah,
This might be one of the things, like, if you had it, this is where sometimes I struggle a little bit with horror and horror franchises. If you have just one film, you can pour a lot into a concept and leave people not really maybe asking all these questions. But as you build a franchise and you spin forward, and I've heard some discussion, we've had unintentional franchises before. I think an example of that is Saw, where I saw the first Saw movie. It was a kind of a concept thing that I knew was going to make me incredibly uncomfortable because, in addition to clowns, I also am not a fan of chainsaws chainsaws. No chainsaws, saws. I actually famously have not finished Scarface because when you get to the point in time where they start cutting the guy apart in the shower, I told my roommate I'm out.
Oh wow!
And I left our room.
Okay.
That's why last year the year before when they remade Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Ricky's like, I need you to watch it because we're going to talk about it. I'm like, this is me proving my fealty to you because there's nothing about this movie that I've never seen the original. I have not seen any of the remakes because as soon as they whip out that chainsaw, or the other thing I hate in movies is when somebody puts their hand in the garbage disposal. I'm like,
oh yeah,
you don't need that wedding ring. Just tell them you're not married. You're not.
Yeah.
Even you'll be watching something like a sitcom and somebody reaches in the sink and I'm like, I gotta leave the room for a minute. And
oh yeah,
I don't think Sheldon's gonna get his hand chewed off. But
Malcolm in the Middle, Francis, he has a bit where he's like,
so,
anyways,
I knew that movie, like the first one, is a very specific thing, and when they decided to make it now an 11 film franchise, it's become something else. And I've heard and seen some people that have seen the Smile movies talking about the indication that with this second one and them wanting to make it a franchise, they've had to expand it, which I always think leads to asking more of these questions that you may not have ever asked with just one standalone movie.
But here's the thing is, I was asking a question with the one standalone movie, and it got worse with the second one. My issue with the first movie is the rules, the way they set them up in the first movie, is that this creature is trying to scare you to the point that it can feed off of you. That's what my interpretation of what they were saying was, that it's like Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy needs to scare you enough to believe that he's powerful enough in order to actually kill you. And my problem with that was halfway through the movie, the lady in that movie completely isn't aware that she's been completely controlled to kill a cat, stick it in a box, and send that box as a birthday present to a kid. And I'm like, if it can control you that completely, then it can kill you immediately. Why why are we continuing to play this game? And then in this movie, it tries to answer that question by saying, oh, it feeds off of the trauma. It chews on the horrible things in you until there's nothing left to chew on. And then it discards you and moves on to somebody else. And I'm like, okay, but it can also make someone live new trauma perpetually forever. So why does it need to ever pass on? Like what, like, at one point I feel like I think I see where it's going, and then it goes another way, and it makes no sense for this creature that has a supposed survival instinct, or maybe it doesn't, because maybe it's possible that the rule they made up, the theory they come up with in this is very Final Destination, where every movie they have a new rule for how they think they can beat death. And in this one, the rule is, well, if it's a parasite, if you don't give it a host, it must die off. So if you kill a person without it being able to pass on and then bring that person back to life, maybe the creature will be gone. It's completely possible.
Wasn't that what she tried in the first one? She tried to isolate
in the first
herself
one,
so she couldn't pass it on.
She tried to isolate herself so she couldn't pass it on, but she didn't know that was going to kill it. The theory in the first one that they brought up is you have to traumatize someone, like you have to kill someone in front of someone in order to pass it along to somebody else. And that plays out in the beginning of this movie before they come up with this. But here's the thing, that whole isolate yourself thing could have been the creature making up a lie. Because at a certain point, the creature is even in charge and is still intentionally driving her to a place to isolate herself. And so it just, the only thing that makes sense is the very ending, which I won't spoil because there is like a cool implication of what's going on and why this creature is so interested in Sky Riley and why it's doing what it's doing. There is a reveal, and I'm going to assume that what happens there in the end is reality, even though the movie gives me no reason to assume it's real. It's pretty obvious that what happens there at the end is reality. And so, yes, it opens itself up to any kind of sequel it wants. And I guess if someone is able to take competent direction and is able to really clearly define the stakes of this creature, you could do something very effective and continue this as a franchise. But man, you have to get your story straight. Like you have to, I don't need a Bagul exposition sequence where somebody sits there and like explains like, oh, this is the creature, and you have to hold the amulet in the right place and whisper his chant while walking backwards in a circle, and that reveals its true name or whatever. I just, you know, the rules for Freddy Krueger, is he can kill you in a dream. If you are holding on to a piece, then when you wake up, then that piece comes with you into reality. You know, that there are like some unspoken rules in Friday the 13th, like if you're underage or you're of age or whatever, like whatever. Halloween, it's babysitters, anybody who's having sex or whatever. Like there's oh, and he in some franchises can't die, in some franchises can die. Like it, you just have to establish clear stakes, because as it stands, this movie, you could completely buy into it. There are plenty of people. The movie has like an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. Everyone out there's enjoying it. I'm in the minority here. But just you can't think about it. And it wants you to think about it because it's talking about trauma and how trauma impacts people. So just like Curtis was saying, it's not just like a Friday the 13th sequel or a Halloween sequel where you're there for the creative kills and you don't think about it because that's not the point. It's trying to be about something and stumbling. So it's a lot harder to get invested. So that's it. It's one thumb down, but the direction and Naomi Scott really, really pull the movie, like really, really make what is there work. So I'm sure plenty of people will want to go see it for Halloween season. I guess if you're not going to see Terrifier 3, this is the other big one that will definitely scare you unless you know how to just like recognize immediately when to cover your ears, in which case it won't really scare you much at all, except for the creative visual of how they make the creature design, something out of like Junji Ito. There's a couple of cool things. I don't know. I get really irritated when some things have like potential to be really good and then it feels wasted and whatnot. And this isn't really that, but there are some cool things in it. Anyways, that's enough of Smile 2 for me.
Well, I mean, I'd be curious to see where Rotten Tomatoes settles to. Like, you're correct that it's got a big number now, but I think a lot of the people that have gone and rated it so far were ones that were kind of excited about it, and maybe predisposed to be fans. But I have seen a lot of people, as you said, that are very into it for what it says about trauma and maybe so maybe it's found a different kind of
it's one of those things to me that annoys me, where just because something is in a movie, people think that it's being thoughtful about it or that it's about it. I'm like, just because trauma is in the movie and is portrayed realistically does not mean that this movie has even the tiniest thing to say about it. The first movie has this really thoughtful implication that trauma is sort of a disease that passes through generations, that passes from person to person. And all of that is in Smile 1. There is nothing new in Smile 2. This movie is not about trauma. It just depicts it. And I don't know. It's kind of annoying when I see so many people get hyped about it, because then it makes a ton of money. Then they're like, oh, definitely a sequel. And instead we're watching Smile 4 or 5 instead of watching, a new horror franchise, or Malignant 2, which is probably a dumber movie than this, but I absolutely adore that movie.
Well, before we switch over, you had one more recommendation. That was your theater movie that you saw, but you had a recommendation for streaming, and that is a Shudder original called One Cut of the Dead.
Yeah, I love One Cut of the Dead. I will tell you all exactly the same thing I was told, which is to go into it blind. I could tell you the basic premise. You can kind of get from the picture. Filmmaking crew supposed to be making a movie about if real zombies invaded the movie making of a zombie movie. Right? Beyond that, just go into it. It is one of the best zombie movies, I will say. I'm not going to talk about genre or anything. Well, zombie movies is kind of a genre, so whatever. And you can watch this on Shudder, but you can also buy this on disc. This is one of the few movies that Shudder has actually released after like a couple of years in order to pick up. And I don't even want to give it any adjectives. It just this is a movie that should be seen by people. If
so I'm guessing it's a thumbs up for you.
It's a 2 strong thumbs up for me. You will be questioning why for the first like 20 minutes of the movie. And I guarantee you, once you hit like the 25 to 30 minute mark, then you can be carried on through the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I was looking. So you're right. It is streaming on Shudder. If you have AMC, you can stream it for free there. It is also available for rent on Amazon. And if you have Hoopla, which I believe is free with a library card, it is streaming on there as well. So a couple of options. Well, I have a couple of options too. I did not see Smile 2, but as Eric knows, I watch a whole ton of things. I've seen a lot of questionable horror this this week I sent him after my last Saturday double feature of Winnie the Pooh and Mickey Mouse going cannibal and or a mass murderer. That's probably the nadir. I did see Strangers Part One, or Chapter One. We've wondered about that. I didn't hate it as much. People said it was like the worst movie of all time. I'm not saying it's good. They
Okay.
did just release the trailer for the second part, and I was like, how are they continuing this? It is mercifully short. Um,
Okay.
and it was I guess to
Smile 2 is
say
not.
I gave it 1 star out of 5, but it was better than I thought it was going to be, which
Okay.
those two things feel like they should be in tension. But I'm going to lift up a couple of things that I've seen recently that you can see or will be able to see that I think are interesting. One is streaming, two theaters, one that's opened this week, one that opens on Friday the 25th, because after today, Eric and I will be off for a couple of weeks doing some personal stuff. I will be seeing hopefully a non-murderous version of Mickey Mouse next weekend as we go to Disney World. And Eric has some fun things on tap. So we will end up being back for what's going to be an incredibly loaded November. We have Heretic coming out, Wicked, Gladiator 2 is coming out, Moana 2. So a lot of fun things coming out in November that we'll be excited about. But if you're still in October, so the first one I'm going to lift up is a streaming film on Max called Caddo Lake, which actually started streaming last Friday. I think I briefly mentioned that I had seen it last week, but this one, they advertise it as, from M. Night Shyamalan, and they dropped it in the middle of October. So you're kind of expecting, I guess, like a horror film with a twist. It's mysterious and it's spooky. It comes from directors Logan George and Celine Held. And the reason that and then M. Night Shyamalan is an executive producer. And I think one of the reasons they got him on board as an executive producer is that pair actually served as writer directors on his Apple TV Plus series Servant. So this is a feature film from them. Dylan O'Brien is in it. Eliza Scanlon, who we've seen in some different spooky things. Lauren Ambrose is in this. Eric Lang. It basically is set in this small community around kind of a mysterious lake bog that they're just off of. Dylan O'Brien works on the lake, works for his father, doing some things. Eliza Scanlon lives off the lake. She has kind of a rocky relationship with her mother, played by Lauren Ambrose, because her biological father disappeared a long time ago, and she was told he was dead. She's always butting up against her mom trying to get information, but she's really close with her stepsister. The stepsister, a young girl, goes missing one night on the lake. So you're thinking, is this going to be like a creepy monster? I don't want to give anything away because this was so much different than what I was expecting. And for probably the first hour or 40 minutes to an hour, I was like, this is weird, but also a little dull, and I can't tell where they're going. And once you figure out what all the threads are going to be and they all come together, I thought the last act was nothing short of fantastic. I was fascinated by how these disparate stories, because you're following Dylan O'Brien and kind of his story, and he has his own thing where he's looking to try to figure out what happened to his mother, because years earlier his mother had gotten into a car crash and died at that lake, and he thought she had a mysterious connection to the lake. And then you have this other girl who's desperately trying to find her sister, looking around in the lake, and they're in the same community, and it takes a little while for these threads to come together, but when they do, it comes together in a really beautiful and emotionally resonant way. But what's probably going to throw a lot of people off is I feel like the entire marketing for this was something of a certain type of horror or Halloween specific, and it is more of a drama. It does have an incredible reveal at the end, which is a throwback to me to some of the greatest of M. Night Shyamalan's. What you think you're watching is not exactly what you're watching, but it comes through in this richly emotional way. And when we start to figure out what is going on, I kind of was like, oh my God. So it was different than I was expecting.
What Caddo Lake?
It's called Caddo Lake, and it is now streaming on Max. It dropped on October 10th. They kind of, like I said, it feels like they kind of dropped it in the middle of their, hey, here's our October kind of spooky season, especially when they tell you it comes from M. Night Shyamalan. And it has a really mysterious trailer. I thought it was going to be about like some kind of serial killer or monster. So, but maybe that's me just reading too much into
Everything you're saying about this is making me think of a movie called Lake Mungo.
Mhm.
And I looked it up. Nobody else is drawing that comparison or anything like that. But
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm wondering like if you'd have to see what the actual twist at the end is.
Yeah.
No, it's not a real long commitment. It's only like an hour and 35 or so
Oh,
minutes.
awesome.
But it was a lot different than what I was expecting, and it was a lot more kind of engaging than I was expecting. My next one, this one opened in theaters yesterday and is called Exhibiting Forgiveness. It is a film that debuted at the Sundance Film Festival. It comes from writer director Titus Kapar. And Ricky actually interviewed him. So if you want to get a little bit more about him and the process of making this film, there is an interview up on the Music City Drive-In site that Ricky did. This is one of his favorite films of the year. He actually saw it at Sundance, has been talking about it. I was excited to be able to see it. It features Andre Holland as an up-and-coming artist who his work is kind of derived from his personal life and some of the trauma he had as a young man. Andra Day plays his wife. He has his own young son. They go back to his hometown, which is already a place that's a little bit fraught for him because they're supposed to be packing up his mother, played by Janae Ellis Taylor. She's supposed to be coming to live with them where they live. But when he gets there, she has really set up a chance for him to reconnect and hopefully reconcile with his estranged father, Laurent, played by John Earl Jelks. And his relationship with his father has been the source of this trauma, which has been some of the best inspiration for his art, but has also taken a deep personal toll. He's somebody that still suffers from nightmares and panic attacks owing to some of these things from his childhood. And it is really about kind of their confrontation and sharing their stories. His father, Laurent, was a heavy drug user who has come out of that life and come out of a life of homelessness and has tried to build himself into a different person, wanting to try to connect and atone with his son. This is obviously not a Halloween specific kind of movie, but it has a lot of rich themes of emotion and forgiveness, some beautiful performances from Ellis Taylor, from Andre Holland, from Jelks, a beautiful original song from Andra Day, who is obviously an incredible musician. But I really love Titus Kapfer is an artist who became, who built this story. And I am sure that he is the one that actually painted the real paintings that you see that depict these sequences from childhood that you later see played out. And those paintings play a rich piece of this film. And it's just really beautiful and breathtaking. Just a really pensive and thoughtful film. If you're looking for something that is not a kid's film and it's not a horror blockbuster, this is more of an adult drama that you can just sink right into in theaters right now. So
That sounds like a November movie. I wish it had come out slightly later because I bet it'll be on digital by then.
yeah, and we've been waiting to see when it was going to land. It made its debut at Sundance. Those Sundance movies kind of roll out. I noticed there's another one of the big Sundance movies called The Real Pain, that came from Jesse Eisenberg, that has him and Kieran Culkin, that was originally, I think, supposed to drop around this time in October. I think it's limited some places, but it actually did slide back to November 1st. I'm actually curious. I'm going to see the Cinemark Secret Series movie on Monday night, and it's either going to be that or Heretic that I'm going to see, and I can't wait to see which one. My last one is something that opens on Friday the 25th. You could go to see Venom. thoughts and prayers for you if that's your bag. But I saw the independent. This one also launched at Sundance, called Your Monster. And that one opens next Friday. I will have more of a full written review on the site during the week, because they like the studios like for you to drop it the week of. But briefly, I will just say I really enjoyed this. I watched the screener. And this one comes from Caroline Lindy. It is about a actress whose life is kind of falling apart, played by Melissa Barrera, who you will have recognized from both Abigail and the more recent Scream films. She plays an actress whose life's kind of fallen apart. She went through an illness. Her boyfriend kind of unceremoniously dumped her. She's trying to pull herself together, and she starts seeing this monster, who is actually played and voiced by Tommy Dewey, who is the actor that played the head writer on SNL on Saturday night last week. I knew the voice was familiar, and I'm like, this delivery and this cadence is incredible. And then looking that up, so kind of a fun couple of weeks for him. But I won't spoil any of this, because, like some of the other movies we've talked about, there are some twists in here that I think you will want to experience. But I thought it was very clever, musical at times, funny at times, a little bit tense and dramatic at times. I really love the performances, and I think that'll be a fun one that opens to much more audiences next week on next Friday. So just a couple of films that aren't the number one blockbuster that's opening the next 2 weeks, but that I have actually enjoyed. I would give all those a solid thumbs up. They were all 3.5 for me out of 5. So enjoyed them. Definitely worth checking out, especially if you're looking for something a little bit different, something a little less $200 million on the screen than some of this stuff. Or based on, if you're like Eric and you're not super pumped about Smile 2. Yeah. Hey, look, good. You're cultivating that smile. Any other things you want to toss out there?
Have a great Halloween season. It's one of my favorite times of the year, and I just hope everybody gets to watch their favorite spooky movies at home and go out to the theater and enjoy it like at night, and get ready for fall, and except for some people who are getting ready for winter.
We're supposed to be back in the 70s. It's supposed to be back to the 60s tomorrow. It's just like last night, and then today we have our storm kind of coming in, and part of it was just me being a baby.
Yeah. Well, no, yeah, we'll see you all after the Halloween.
Yeah, we will be back talking about Heretic, which opens wide on November 8th. We will be back on Saturday, November 9th, talking about Heretic, maybe covering some of the other things that we have seen. I am still planning to see Venom: The Last Dance next week. May drop a short video before I head off to Florida. But hopefully you guys have a wonderful couple of weeks, and stay safe out there for Halloween and the election. We will be back after the election. We're really taking this time off to reflect.
Oh my gosh, it'll be the day after the election, won't it?
No, the election's on a Tuesday. So
on a Tuesday.
Yeah, so it'll be a couple of days after.
Okay. I have like flashbacks of it being
if it's like last
time.
We still may not know who our president is, but
yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, no, we will know. We'll be living in a different mood. Watching Heretic at the same Oh, okay. I'm gonna need 2 weeks to get ready, so that's good. Yeah.
Well, you guys stay safe out there. Enjoy the season. Maybe fire up just a little Coco on November 1st, so that you can celebrate that Dia de los Muertos Disney style. But we will see you guys in a couple of weeks. Until then, see you at the movies.